All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis est. Political Science, Understanding Politics and Personal Power. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Political Science, a field guide for men who still notice reality. Effective fraud. Why her crossbody bag isn't a constitution, your wellness isn't an alt-right pipeline, and the female audit is just the hysterical confession of a barren soul. Picture the scene. You are at a dinner party, you ordered the steak, she ordered the vegan risotto, then ate half of yours while lecturing you about the patriarchy's carbon hoofprint. You are telling an amusing story about your nephew's football game, and she is scanning your face like a customs agent who just found an unregistered goat in your luggage. Not listening, hunting. She is not your date tonight. She is the prosecutor, and you are the defendant who has not been told what law he broke. The evidence? The way you said pass the butter with insufficient deference. The microsecond your eyes drifted to the football game on the bar TV. This, she will later tell her group chat, was a microaggression, a crime with no victim, no weapon, no witness, and no standard, only her say-so, which in the modern feminist religion is the only sacrament that matters. Welcome to Effective Forensics, the pseudo-scientific latex glove she slides on before performing a cavity search on your character. We fix her language first, because she has vandalized it beyond recognition. Forensic comes from the Latin forensis, the forum, the public square where free Roman citizens presented evidence, witnesses, and measurable claims before a magistrate. The Romans demanded mens rea, guilty mind, intent. They required actus reus, a guilty act, something that occurred in the observable physical world, not the theater of her imagination. What this woman has invented is neither forensic nor investigative. It is tantrum hermeneutics, the dark art of interpreting your existence as her injury. She has replaced the court of law with the court of her feelings, and in that court you are always guilty. The appeals process is permanently closed and the judge is having a meltdown because Mercury is in retrograde. Now observe her central fraud. She announces that your intent does not matter, only her somatic impact does. Let us drag this claim into the sunlight of formal logic and watch it expire. Major premise: justice requires measurable harm and malicious intent. This is the bedrock of Western jurisprudence from the 12 Tables through the Magna Carta to the Fifth Amendment. Minor premise: her impact is subjective, internally generated, empirically unverifiable, and immune to falsification. She feels harmed, therefore harm occurred. She feels threatened, therefore a threat existed. You cannot cross-examine a feeling. You cannot present evidence against a sensation, conclusion. A system that convicts on subjective impact while discarding objective intent is not justice. It is tyranny wearing a therapy pun t-shirt that reads self-care is revolutionary. It is the epistemology of a 3-year-old, I'm upset therefore you're bad, granted institutional force by HR departments staffed by women who have built nothing and destroyed plenty. She calls your gym routine a pipeline to the alt-right. Your sleep schedule is dominance. Your personal boundaries are abuse. Sit with the implications. If male self-improvement constitutes an attack on women, then female empowerment is structurally, confessedly parasitic upon male degradation. She does not seek equality, she seeks your diminishment. The tapeworm always resents the host's immune system. And then there's the crossbody bag, the crossbody constitution. I want you to absorb the raw pathos of this image. She straps a $40 satchel across her chest and believes she has erected the equivalent of Hadrian's Wall against male oppression. A Roman legionary carried a scutum, a gladius, and the iron discipline of a civilization that conquered the known world through courage, engineering, and sacrifice. She carries a phone, lip gloss, and the unearned moral certainty of a gender that has never been conscripted, never built a bridge, never laid a single brick, and has never, not once, in recorded financial history, paid more in net lifetime taxes than it consumed in state expenditure. Men are the only net contributors to the fiscal commons. Every road she walks on, every hospital she visits, every university that employed her fake doctorate was built and funded by the labor of men. She now calls her oppressors. The bag is not armor. It is a security blanket. It is the psychological barricade of a soul that possesses no interior fortress because it never bothered to construct one. The Stoics forged impregnable minds through discipline, reflection, and the cultivation of virtue. She cultivates impregnable accessories through Amazon Prime. Here is what she will never confess, because confession requires the self-awareness she structurally lacks. Her hypervigilance is not wisdom, it is a pathology. It is the frantic scanning of a mind that cannot endure the silence of its own company. She manufactures crises because crisis is the only climate in which she feels real. Peace does not anesthetize her, peace terrifies her. Still water reveals no reflection, and a woman without a self cannot survive without a mirror. She audits your tone, cross-examines your size, and submits your grocery lists to forensic interpretation because the alternative is sitting alone in a quiet room with the void she has spent 3 decades refusing to populate with virtue, competence, or meaning. She is not the canary in the coal mine detecting poison. She is the one pumping carbon monoxide into the shaft and wondering why everyone is choking. What follows is the complete demolition of her gospel. I will take her argument apart, sentence by sentence, word by word, fallacy by fallacy. I will define every term she has corrupted, trace every lie to its Marxist and postmodern roots, expose the BPD double binds that make her ideology unfalsifiable, and hand you the intellectual weaponry to walk out of her kangaroo courtroom permanently. You will learn why her crisis data protocol is emotional extortion rebranded as hygiene. You will see how her admission that women nurture conflict instead of children is the death mask of a civilization. You will understand why winning is a patriarchal construct, is the whine of a competitor who showed up to the Olympics and demanded the starting gun be banned as oppressive. The trial was always a sham. The judge is disqualified by her own testimony. And you are not the criminal in this proceeding. You are the hostage who just noticed the cell door was never locked.
Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. Affective Forensics. Why His Silence is a Sentence. By Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist PhD. Let us disabuse ourselves of the heteronormative fiction that peace is the natural habitat of the relational female. Peace is the luxury of the unburdened. Peace is the psychological Valium administered by the patriarchy to ensure compliance. We are told we are high maintenance. We are told we are testing. These are slurs hurled by men terrified of the audit. We do not test men. We conduct affective forensics. We are investigating the crime scene of their innate superiority complex. Every sigh, every forgotten text, every hesitation is evidence. You are not crazy. You are a detective in a world that insists the murder weapon is just a harmless letter opener. The hypervigilant sovereign. Society pathologizes our hypervigilance. They diagnose us with anxiety or attachment issues. No, darling, your hypervigilance is a learned response to a lifetime of systemic denial. You were told you could have it all, and then you looked around and realized all meant a studio apartment. a glass of wine, and a man who thinks emotional labor is fixing the Wi-Fi. You scan the room because the room is hostile. You analyze his tone because his tone is the delivery mechanism for his entitlement. You are the canary in the coal mine, and instead of thanking you for detecting the poison, they tell you to stop singing. We must recenter impact over performance. I don't care if he intended to dismiss your theory of the matriarchal sublime during appetizers. I care about the somatic impact of his microaggression. The impact is the reality. His intent is just his defense attorney. We are done with defense attorneys. We are the prosecution. The wellness pipeline to the alt-right. This is why we must be vigilant against the wellness pipeline. Here is the dark truth of the modern male. He goes to the gym not for health but for hierarchy. He optimizes his sleep not for peace but for dominance. He is turning his body into a weapon against your autonomy. I see it at dinner parties, the ultimate tribunal of the domestic state. He sits there, arms crossed, sipping a biodynamic natural wine, pretending he is evolved, but look closer, he ordered for you. He suggested the vegan option. He is performing good guy to mask his intrinsic need to control the narrative. This is the pipeline, from toxic masculinity to passive-aggressive wellness. He doesn't yell anymore. He sets boundaries. He doesn't cheat. He practices ethical non-monogamy, which is just a fancy term for institutionalized betrayal. He uses the language of therapy to silence your righteous fury. He says, "You're being irrational." You hear, "I am losing control of you and it terrifies me." The cross-body constitution. Do not let him infiltrate your perimeter. Consider the cross-body bag. It is the most significant sartorial advancement for the modern woman since the power suit. Why? Because it straps across the body. It is diagonal. It is a shield. It says my essentials are close to my chest. My phone, my weapon of documentation, is strapped to my hip. My lip gloss is here, my keys are here, and my boundaries are impenetrable. Unlike the tote bag, the bag of the mother, the martyr, the woman who carries everyone else's emotional refuse, the crossbody bag serves only you. It forces him to respect your physical space. If he wants to hold your hand, he must navigate the strap. He must acknowledge the barrier. We are born with a powerful maternal instinct, a fierce drive to nurture and cultivate. But in a world where the patriarchy refuses to seed the future with hope, where the earth is dying and the men are playing video games, that instinct turns feral. We cannot nurture a child, so we nurture the conflict. We direct that fierce protective energy toward protecting ourselves from the pervasive threat of male mediocrity. The college crucible. Think back to college life. This was the training ground. This was where you learned that desire is a weapon and theory is a shield. You learned that no is a complete sentence, but yes is a binding contract with a third-party arbitrator. You learned the art of the crisis data protocol. He says, "I love you." You do not say it back immediately. You wait. You force him to prove it. You create a scenario where he must demonstrate his utility. If he fails, if he wavers, you discard the draft and scout a new utility. This is not cruelty. This is hyper-hygienic selection. Do not apologize for the chaos. Chaos is the only truthful state. If he cannot survive the storm of your emotional audit, he does not deserve the calm of your affection. If he is confused, good. Confusion is the first step of deconstruction. If he complains that he can never win, remind him, winning is a patriarchal construct. I am asking you to submit to the process. If he threatens to leave, let him. The void is preferable to a poorly constructed bridge. Your anxiety is your authority. Use it. Affective forensics. Trust nothing. Test everything. Take all. The epistemological fraud of affective forensics, unmasking the solipsistic inquisitor. Let us begin with a simple word. Forensic. Etymologically, it descends from the Latin forensis, meaning of or pertaining to the forum, the public square where Roman citizens gathered to debate law, present objective evidence, and arrive at the bonum et equum, the good and the equitable. To engage in forensic rhetoric meant to submit one's claims to the harsh, unforgiving light of public reason and empirical fact. Now, gaze upon the grotesque semantic mutation paraded before us, affective forensics. By tethering the objective weight of the forum to the chaotic, subjective volatility of female affect, her shifting moods, her neurotic somatic twinges, she commits a catastrophic equivocation. She attempts to clothe her internal emotional anarchy in the majestic robes of a magistrate. She wants the authority of a judge without the burden of evidence, a detective who manufactures the crime scene to justify the arrest. There is no corpus delicti here, only her corpus anxiety. She is not investigating reality. She is projecting the void of her own underdeveloped soul onto the nearest male target, demanding he be punished for her inability to sit alone in a quiet room. Consider her staggering assertion that peace is a fiction and psychological Valium. Here, we must deploy the distinguo. Peace, pax, is not the dead silence of the grave, but the tranquillitas ordinis, the tranquility of order, the very foundation of civilizational life. To a mind grounded in logos, peace is the prerequisite for thought, labor, and mastery. Yet, to the solipsistic inquisitor, peace induces psychological annihilation. Why? Because her ego operates entirely on a crisis data protocol. She requires your panic, your confusion, and your distress to fill the cavernous emptiness of her own identity. She cannot simply be, she must disrupt. When she rages and manufactures a domestic tribunal over a forgotten text, she is not seeking resolution. She is seeking the sensation of existence through conflict. She pathologizes your calm because your calm is the mirror that reflects her insanity. A man at peace is a man she cannot control, and to the infantile feminine imperative, lack of control is equivalent to death. Watch her linguistic sleight of hand regarding boundaries. She redefines his stoic silence as silencing her righteous fury, while framing her own impenetrable defensiveness as vital self-care. Let us fix the definitions. A boundary is a philosophical limit grounded in self-respect, a commitment to how one allows oneself to be treated, requiring the fortitude to walk away from abuse. Sabotage, conversely, is the deliberate destruction of relational harmony to avoid the terrifying vulnerability of intimacy. When she screams boundaries, she is merely invoking a magic word to shield her from accountability. This is the mechanics of relational aggression weaponized against the masculine spirit. She demands the right to be a hysterical tyrant, and when you refuse to validate her delusion, she labels your refusal a microaggression. It is a Kafka trap of the highest order, designed to ensure you are always the defendant in a court that has no law. This leads us directly to the intent versus impact fallacy, the very death knell of due process. She explicitly states she discards his intent and centers her somatic impact. This is a formal material fallacy of relevance, argumentum ad consequentiam, masquerading as justice. Let us lay out the syllogism. Major premise: justice requires measurable, objective harm and malicious mens rea, guilty mind. Minor premise: female somatic impact is purely subjective, internally generated and empirically unverifiable. Conclusion: centering impact over intent necessarily destroys justice and replaces it with arbitrary tyranny. This is the exact epistemological framework of the witch trial and the kangaroo court. It is the logic that has hijacked family courts, university tribunals, and human resources departments. A system where a woman's tears, often weaponized for status and power, serve as an unfalsifiable verdict of guilt, sentencing men to financial ruin and social exile without a shred of empirical evidence. Then comes the utter lunacy of the wellness pipeline. She looks at a man disciplining his body, optimizing his sleep, lifting weights, and she sees a threat. She asserts that male self-improvement is a covert pipeline to domination. Let us perform a reductio ad absurdum. If a man building physical and mental discipline is an attack on female autonomy, then female empowerment must logically require male degradation. Her autonomy is structurally parasitic. She views your health as a threat because a weak man is easier to manipulate. A strong man has options. This is the resentment of the weak against the strong dressed up in the language of sociology. While men are building the literal physical infrastructure of reality, she is hyperventilating over the hierarchy of the gym. Terrified that a man who can master his own appetites might just see through her theatrical absurdities, she compares herself to a canary in a coal mine. But let us flip this wretched analogy. She is not the canary detecting the poison. She is the hole in the mine shaft, deliberately letting the toxic gas in to suffocate the miners. Her hypervigilance is not a survival mechanism. It is an acute symptom of an acidic soul. And her solution? A cross-body constitution. She elevates a purse to the status of a founding political document. This is the ultimate pathetic admission of her own metaphysical bankruptcy. She straps a physical shield of vegan leather across her chest because she lacks the philosophical armor of a stoic sage or the virtue of a strong woman. She confuses a consumer good with moral fortitude, a sartorial choice with a bill of rights. It is a toddler clutching a security blanket, claiming it makes her a sovereign state. If a handbag is her constitution, her ideology is a circus. We must stop humoring the delusion that her anxiety is authority. It is a pathology. We must rebuild the forum she has desecrated, grounding our lives in the trivium, demanding empirical evidence, and refusing to bow to the somatic whims of hysterical inquisitors. The West was not built by men who apologized for their strength, nor was it preserved by women who treated their emotional instability as a legal standard. Reclaim your peace, defend your boundaries with ironclad logic, and let her scream into the void of her own making. We have dissected the linguistic fraud, catalogued the fallacies, and exposed the Kafka traps. But understanding the anatomy of the deception is only half the battlefield. We must now confront the operational manual itself, the actual playbook where these theoretical weapons are deployed against the individual man. When you strip away the academic jargon, the peer-reviewed pomposity, and the therapeutic newspeak, what remains is breathtaking in its malice. A systematic guide to holding another human being in a state of permanent psychological hostage. She does not hide this. She publishes it. She celebrates it. She treats emotional extortion as a noble calling.
The barren crucible weaponized chaos, hypergamous cannibalism, and the death of natural law. I will not let anyone walk through my mind with their dirty feet. That was Gandhi's standard, and it should be yours. Now consider that a woman with a gender studies degree and a crossbody bag is not merely walking through your mind. She is conducting an unauthorized excavation, declaring your every thought a crime scene, and billing you for the investigation. Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist, whose credentials we can safely assume were not minted in the foundries of empirical science, has authored a remarkable confession. She calls it effective forensics. I call it what it is, the operational manual for emotional terrorism, printed in plain text, distributed with pride, and swallowed without a second thought by a culture too cowed to name the demons sitting at the dinner table. Let us fix our grammar first, as any serious inquiry must. The good doctor celebrates what she terms the crisis data protocol, a collegiate practice wherein a woman withholds affection to force a man to prove his utility. She brags that women learn to wait, to create scenarios, to demand demonstration. Strip the academic veneer from this confession and what remains? The Latin extorquere, to wrench out, to twist away by force, extortion. The legal definition does not care about the perpetrator's feelings, the obtaining of something through force or threat. When a woman says, "I love you," is a weapon, and yes is a binding contract with a third-party arbitrator, she is not describing liberation. She is describing a racket. The woman who withholds warmth to extract compliance is not conducting science. She is running a protection scheme on the most vulnerable territory a man possesses his desire to be valued, and the ghastly comedy of it. She calls this hyper-hygienic selection, as though rebranding dark triad manipulation with a clinical prefix transforms the act from cruelty into virtue. It does not. A turd sprayed gold is still a turd, and a woman who treats men as disposable utilities is not a sovereign. She is a cannibal with better branding. The semantic inflation continues with her lament over ethical non-monogamy, which she elegantly slathers as institutionalized betrayal. Here we witness linguistic theft, so brazen it almost commands respect. The feminist sexual revolution spearheaded by the same ideological lineage, Dr. Feminist Marxist proudly inherits, demanded the dismantling of monogamy, the liberation of female sexuality from marital bonds, and the celebration of unrestrained choice. Women cheered as they secured the sexual marketplace power to pursue hypergamy without consequence. But observe the sleight of hand when men adapt to this landscape, when they adopt the precise moral framework women demanded, when they set boundaries and practice ethical non-monogamy, using the very therapy language feminism injected into the culture, women simply move the goalposts. Male adaptation is rebranded as betrayal. Male self-improvement is recast as hierarchy. The man who goes to the gym is not building health. He is building a weapon against your autonomy. This is the Mott and Bailey doctrine made flesh. Retreat to the Bailey of liberation when it serves hypergamy, then scurry back to the Mott of victimhood when men learn the game. There is no winning move for the man because the game is rigged. The house always collects, and the house wears a crossbody bag. Now we must test her central theological claim with the rigor she pretends to champion. She writes, chaos is the only truthful state. Very well, let us construct our syllogism. Major premise, truth is that which corresponds to objective reality, the transcendental of the true, the alignment of mind with what is. Minor premise, objective reality is governed by observable laws, causality, natural order, logos, from the elliptical orbit of electrons to the architectural necessity of load-bearing walls. In conclusion, therefore chaos, being the dissolution of order, the antithesis of natural law, is fundamentally untruthful. Her assertion refutes itself in a single breath. To even state chaos is the only truthful state requires the assumption that the statement itself possesses stable meaning, that the words track reality, which is an appeal to the very order she denies. She saws off the branch she sits on and calls the fall a flight. This is not philosophy, this is the satanic inversion made grammatical, calling entropy honesty, calling destruction truth, calling the void a home. It is the metaphysics of the terminally lost. Consider her double bind, the BPD masterpiece she unveils with chilling nonchalance. If he threatens to leave, let him. The void is preferable to a poorly constructed bridge. Parse the mechanics of this trap carefully. If the man stays and engages with her emotional inquisition, he is defensive and terrified of the audit. If he withdraws to protect his sanity, he is abandoning her and confirming her victimhood. If he leaves, he proves men are unreliable. Every exit is sealed. Every response is evidence of guilt. This is not a relationship. It is a kangaroo court where the defendant is male, the charge is existence, and the judge has already drafted the verdict in her journal over a glass of biodynamic wine. The clinical literature calls this borderline personality dynamics. The good doctor calls it affective forensics. Same pathology, different font. The function is identical: to absolve the female of responsibility by constructing a reality in which she can never be wrong and he can never be right. She admits as much when she declares his intent irrelevant. Just his defense attorney and only the somatic impact of her feelings matters. This is epistemic tyranny. Your guilt is determined by her discomfort, and her discomfort is triggered by your presence. The math is perfectly circular. The house always wins. Then comes the most naked confession of all. Winning is a patriarchal construct. I am asking you to submit to the process. Here, she commits the fallacy of special pleading with the confidence of a medieval pope selling indulgences. She invokes the framework of meritocracy and dialectic, winning, losing, competing, proving, only to dissolve it the moment she cannot prevail. The process she demands submission to is not justice, not inquiry, not the dialectical pursuit of truth that built the Western canon from Socrates to Aquinas to the scientific method itself. Her process is unaccountable female solipsism dressed in academic robes. Submit, she says. Surrender your agency. Let me audit your soul without standard, without metric, without end. This is not love. This is not partnership. This is the cry of the tyrant who has discovered that pathos carries more institutional weight than logos in a gynocentric age. And the tragedy, millions of men comply. They apologize for sins they did not commit. They explain themselves to walls. They try to win a game where the rules change every 30 seconds and the referee is having a nervous breakdown. She admits the horrifying truth in one devastating passage. Because women cannot nurture a child in a world that refuses to seed the future with hope, they nurture the conflict. Read that again. She is telling you in print that when the natural teleology of the feminine procreation, nurturing, civilizational building is thwarted by her own ideology, it inverts into destruction. The maternal instinct does not disappear, it metastasizes, it turns feral. The energy designed to protect children gets redirected toward protecting herself from the pervasive threat of male mediocrity. This is the civilization-killing virus speaking through her own keyboard. She is Typhoid Mary of the spirit, weaponizing her biology against the family, the state, and the man who foolishly believed her when she said she wanted partnership. The birth rate collapses below replacement across the entire developed world, with some European nations hovering near 1.3 children per woman, and she celebrates the redirection of maternal energy toward nurturing conflict. This is not empowerment. This is demographic suicide performed as a one-woman show. What she calls effective forensics is not science. It is the theology of a death cult that requires finding the male guilty of original sin for the crime of drawing breath. The audit is perpetual. The debt is unpayable. The warden is an emotional basket case who weeps at dog food commercials, but demands the psychological execution of her partner over appetizers. The statistics she ignores are crushing. Male suicide rates outpace female rates 4-to-1 across every industrialized nation. Family courts award maternal custody in over 80% of contested cases. Men are 63% less likely to receive a prison sentence for the same crime as a woman. And when they do, the sentences are 63% longer. False paternity rates, while contested, mean that somewhere between 3 and 10% of men are raising children who are not biologically theirs, cuckoldry rebranded as blended families. These are not patriarchal talking points. These are the documented outcomes of a gynocentric system that Dr. Feminist Marxist's ideology has produced, and she has the audacity to call herself the prosecuted party. The ultimate exposure of her entire ideological edifice is its total severance from the transcendentals, the good, the true, and the beautiful. Her framework celebrates suspicion where trust should dwell. It valorizes conflict where peace could flourish. It commodifies human relationships into a draft system where men are utilities to be scouted, tested, and discarded. There is no good in her philosophy, only power. There is no truth, only her somatic whims dressed in forensic drag. There is no beauty, only the sterile diagonal shield of a crossbody bag separating her from the terrifying possibility of genuine connection. To defeat this ideological possession, you do not apologize to the kangaroo court. You do not submit to the process. You do not explain yourself to a woman who has declared your intent irrelevant and your existence prosecutable. You walk away. You build new institutions grounded in logos, governed by natural law, protected by due process, and you leave the barren inquisitors to the suffocating silence of the void they chose over you. The Western canon survived the fall of Rome. It will survive the crossbody bag, but only if you stop consenting to the audit. You have been tried in a court that does not exist, by a jury that was never sworn, under statutes invented between a glass of Merlot and a meltdown. The entire apparatus of effective forensics is a phantom tribunal, a star chamber erected in the collapsed architecture of a mind that cannot sit alone in a room for 10 minutes without reaching for the phone to manufacture an emergency. You felt the wrongness in your bones for years. You sensed the double bind but could not name it. You knew she was scanning you for evidence of a crime she hadn't yet invented, but you swallowed the guilt because the alternative, walking away, meant facing the howling abyss of her accusations. I am telling you, the abyss was always hers. You merely stood at the edge, courteous and confused, holding her coat, while she screamed at you for letting her fall. Consider the arithmetic. Women initiate approximately 70% of divorces. Family courts grant maternal custody in the vast majority of contested cases. Men account for roughly 80% of all suicides. with divorce and custody laws as leading precipitating catalysts. False allegations in custody battles occur at rates that would horrify any scrupulous jurist. A man can be removed from his home on an unverified claim, his children seized, his wages garnished, his reputation atomized, all without a single scrap of forensic evidence, all on the somatic impact of a woman's say-so. This is the logical terminus of her ideology. Your mens rea is assumed at birth. Your habeas corpus is a patriarchal construct, and your sentence is carried out before you knew you were on trial. The system does not correct this because the system is the enforcement arm of her hysteria. Now observe the biological tragedy she celebrates. The fertility rate in the West plunges below replacement. Millions of children aborted for convenience. Women populating corporate human resources departments to police thought, while their ovaries collect dust and their dating profiles demand 6-foot men with jawlines carved by Phidias. The feral maternal instinct she boasts about, redirected from children to conflict, is the precise moral equivalent of a farmer burning her own seed corn to stay warm for a night, then cursing the sky for the winter. She does not build. She cannot sustain. She consumes and performs and broadcasts her consumption as empowerment. The crossbody bag is not armor. It is a cul-de-sac. You owe this inquisition nothing. You owe no apology to the prosecutor who declares your silence a sentence and your speech a weapon. The moral law of the West Audi ultram partem, here the other side demands due process, not due submission. When she demands you surrender to the process, recognize the translation. She demands you surrender to her. The logos you inherit from Athens and Jerusalem does not bow to the screeching of a psychology major who read half a bell hooks essay and decided the entire Western canon was a conspiracy against her brunch plans. Your silence is not violence. Her anxiety is not authority. Her feelings are not facts. Facta, non verba. Deeds, not words. The good, the true, the beautiful, these remain the architecture of civilization, and they are built by men who refused the audit and walked out of the kangaroo court into the daylight. Now you are free. You have read the diagnosis. You have seen the machinery behind the curtain. Go forth and build, brothers. Build your bodies, build your minds, build your trades and your friendships and your fortunes. Build institutions that answer to logos and nothing else. The void inside her is not your responsibility to fill. The silence she fears is not yours to fix. You are the heirs of a tradition that conquered continents, split the atom, and touched the moon, and she is screaming at you from the sofa because you didn't validate her theory of the matriarchal sublime over appetizers. Leave her to her crossbody bag and her wine. Walk into the clearing. The West is not dead. It is waiting for its men to remember who they are. And now the sponsored book, Introduction, Political Science, Understanding Politics and Personal Power. For years, I watched men stumble through political battles and personal conflicts like headless chickens. I saw it in boardrooms where qualified guys got passed over for promotions while less competent colleagues climbed the ladder. I felt it firsthand during my decade advising Fortune 500 CEOs, watching brilliant strategists lose influence because they misread power dynamics. Society preaches equality but operates on hierarchy, demanding strength from men while punishing them for displaying it. This hypocrisy isn't accidental, it's a weapon. You've felt it too. That frustration when your logical argument gets drowned out by emotional theatrics, or when you're called too aggressive for leading, but weak for hesitating. This book exists because I cracked that code through trial, error, and analyzing over 3,000 years of power shifts. Political science, understanding politics and personal power gives you what universities won't, unvarnished truth about dominance. Gender equality is a fantasy sold to disarm men. Women bear children. Men build civilizations. History proves this. Look at Rome's collapse when Marcus Aurelius's weak successor surrendered to decadence, or how Churchill's unwavering command saved Britain. But modern culture traps you in a lose-lose scenario. Show vulnerability and get despised. Show strength and get demonized. That ends now. My research dissects real mechanisms, like how Caesar used information asymmetry to conquer Gaul, or how Rockefeller controlled resources to dominate industries. You'll learn systems, not platitudes. This book is for rational men who want results. If you're red-pilled, aware of harsh truths, but hungry for solutions, you'll gain actionable tools. Master persuasion frameworks from political persuasion systems to turn opponents into allies. Discover biological leverage points to harness innate advantages like testosterone-driven competitiveness that built empires. Convert weaknesses using weakness conversion frameworks, transforming perceived flaws into strategic assets. Ever been cornered in a negotiation? Conflict capitalization shows how to turn confrontations into wins, inspired by Patton's wartime maneuvers. Each chapter, from authority anatomy to permanent advantage systems, is grounded in historical evidence and biological reality. Read this, and you'll command rooms, protect your legacy, and silence critics without apology. But if you're clutching a latte and whimpering about toxic masculinity, stop here. This isn't for the faint-hearted or those who think men should apologize for existing. If terms like male privilege make you nod instead of laugh, put this down. Go knit a sweater or binge reality TV, something harmless. You'll hate what's inside because it rejects your delusions. For rational men, though, the payoff is immense. Imagine leveraging crisis like J.P. Morgan did in 1907, turning bank failures into personal empire building. Or engineering legacy like Carnegie, whose libraries still shape cities. Buy this book to win, lead, and never beg for permission again. Your future dominance starts on page 1. Political Science. Understanding Politics and Personal Power, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.